Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Mike Kollin at crackthefemalecode.com. Okay, so I'm going to teach you something really simple and yet very, very powerful and very necessary in a relationship with a woman. So I just saw a YouTube short, and I think it was Natalie Portman. Let me take a look. I'm not sure if that's who it is or if it's this other young lady. Yeah, it is Natalie Portman, and the guy is a famous actor, but I do not remember his name. So the guy just cries out, "I love you!" And she goes, "Where?" He goes, "What?" She goes, "Where? I can't see it. I can't touch it. I can't feel it." This reminds me of when I was a little kid, when my mom would just scream at my father like, "You don't love me." My high school girlfriend did the same thing after 2 years. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like, she was the love of my life. But no matter how hard I tried to love her, she didn't believe it. And there's a reason why. It has to do with the way that we are wired neurologically. This piece has nothing to do with male or female. This just has to do with different people, for whatever reason, are wired differently to receive love in a different way. I remember when I was a kid, my dad bought out the florist, and I mean the entire florist. And I remember walking by it one day on the way home from school, and it was completely empty. And I thought, well, that's weird, because I'd never seen it like that. As a little kid, I think I was in first grade. I figured, well, the florist is probably cleaning it out, like a yearly cleaning thing or something. So I get home, and when I walked up the walkway, the pathway, there was flowers all over, these big standing like 5 foot, tripod things with like bouquets and flowers. There's petals all over the ground. And I opened the door, and my dad peeks around the kitchen. He goes, Michael, get in, hurry, Mom's going to be home soon. I was like, what? I walk in, I close the door, and the living room is entirely full. The couches, the chairs, the tables, the entire fireplace, even the floor was completely covered with flowers. And on the left side was the stairs that went up to the bedroom, and there was petals all the way up there, and the room was full of flowers and bouquets and everything too. My dad loved my mom. And I was so proud of my dad, and I was so happy, for my mom. And sure enough, she had like it was like a Mach 3 or something like that. She had a real powerful kind of sports car, with the engine. She pulls up, and we're hiding in the kitchen, and I'm just thinking, my mom is going to be so happy. My mom walks in, and it was really quiet. She didn't say anything, and we're kind of hiding and waiting for her to say something. And you could hear her walking around. She went in the living room a little bit and kind of came back out. And she screams, "God damn it! What the hell did you do this time?" And she's just screaming. I'm like, why is she mad? I mean, my mom was pissed. So my dad looks out. She goes, "God damn it, Gary! What the hell did you do this for?" And she was just screaming. Now, as a little kid, I was just like lost. Like, even I knew that my dad was obviously expressing his love and being romantic. Long story short, I remember going to bed almost every night with my mother screaming and yelling. Like, it just never stopped. I mean, this went on for another year, maybe more than that. And she kicked him out of the house. She divorced him. We sold both the restaurants. We moved to Wisconsin. She married another guy 6 months later, blah, blah, blah. And it was the most heart-wrenching. I remember my dad, when he was packing one morning, and I knew he was leaving, and I go, "Daddy, what are you doing?" He goes, "I have to move out." It was heart-wrenching. So when I got to high school, after 2 years of the love of my life, my high school girlfriend yelled at me too. It was just this horrendous thing. But then, now again, her and I, after that 2 years, like the next 2 years after that, was just a nightmare. It's like she would scream, "You don't love me," no matter what I did. Now, I've met a lot of guys and a lot of clients who've told me, like, "Oh yeah, that's the story of my life. No matter what I do, it's wrong." Well, believe it or not, there's a reason. So in this movie, this young Natalie Portman yells. So he goes, I love you. And she's like, where? He goes, what? She goes, where? I can't see it. I can't touch it. I can't feel it. She goes, I can hear it. She says, I can hear your easy words, but I can't do anything with your easy words. She literally just described the deep love strategy. Each of us, men and women, have a different... Now, it doesn't matter what the gender is, because men will have one of these three, and women will have one of these three. It's neurological. It's a way that we are wired neurologically, the way our nerves inside our nervous system are wired. For some reason, some people, men or women, are wired to visual. Those people need to see it. It could be a tiny little flower, a little daisy. Just pluck it up and hand it to her. You don't even have to say, I love you. Now, my ex-girlfriend in my 20s was like, you don't love me. And I remember her saying to me, that's not love, because I was kinesthetic. Kinesthetic means to hug. So visual is see. Auditory means they have to hear it. Kinesthetic means touch. Meaning they need to be hugged. They need you to hold their hands. They need, like if you're sitting down at the movies, to lean on you. You know, to curl up in your arms. Kinesthetic people are touchy and feely. They need to be hugged. Now, if you don't like to be touched, you shouldn't be in a relationship with someone who does, because it's just going to be a nightmare for both of you. She's going to want to pull you closer. You're going to want to pull away, and she's going to think that you don't love her because of it. So, the reason why I got into this business is because I remember how heartbroken my dad was. And I remember how heartbroken I was when me and my high school girlfriend broke up. And it's like, I was just like, there has to be some kind of an answer. So when I was about 19 or 20 years old, I went to see my dad in Mountain View. And I was going to go to church, which is literally like three houses down on the corner on the across the street. And I was walking down. And I was an associate pastor. It was my first time I was going to speak in front of the church. I was a very young guy. And I remember, actually it was a little bit later in my 20s. So I was a little bit later in my 20s. So my dad, for the first time ever, walked me down to the end of the driveway, which I thought was kind of odd. And he didn't really say nothing. And I said, Dad, why don't you come to church? And he goes, no, that's all right, Dad. I go, Dad, do you believe in God? He goes, yeah, but not the way that church people do. And that was good enough for me. So then what happened was, like literally like 2 seconds later, we get to the end and he stopped and he bursts out in tears and he cries out, if God is so great, why did he make it so hard to love a woman? And he just is sobbing and sobbing, and he just goes, the harder I tried to love your mom, the angrier she got. And she's just bawling and bawling. He goes, no matter what I did, she just got angry. And that's exactly what happens when you love someone that in a way that is not their deep love strategy. Because to them, that's not love. It's like, they're like, what are you doing? But to you, it pushes your deep love strategy. It pushes your neurological button, and it makes you feel loved. And that's why you love them in the way that you're loved. Now, if you are lucky and you married someone or are dating someone who has the same love button, unconsciously you guys will be pushing the same button. And you'll absolutely know that they love you. It's without a doubt. That's why some people's relationships, like they're just madly in love 10, 15, 20 years later, and you're like, what's the secret? And here's the thing, they don't even know. It's unconscious. They accidentally met someone who has the same love strategy. Now here's the good news. You can learn how to discover their love strategy so you can consciously push their button. The challenge is it will be a bit of work, but if it's worth it, it's really not that hard. Like, I'm kinesthetic, and my ex-girlfriend in my 20s, she was visual. And I remember I used to hug her and hug her and hug her, and one day she shoved me away. And the same thing my high school girlfriend did. She did it in front of a crowd of about 200 people. She was pissed and people gathered around. What's going on? I walked out of class and I walked out in the middle of the circle and I gave her a hug and boom, she shoved me away. you don't love me. That's not love. To her, being hugged wasn't love. But to me, if you don't hug me, no matter what you do, I remember my girlfriend in my 20s, she had bought me some gifts and brought them over one day, and I opened the door and I'm like, what's this? And I was pissed. She goes, oh, baby, I got these for you. I love you. And I go, that's not love. And I literally said, you can't buy my love. And the funny thing was, I just taught a workshop about 2 days before on this deep love strategy. I go, oh, baby, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. That's your way of expressing your love. She goes, yeah, baby. And she's crying because I yelled at her. I'm sorry. I just wanted to show. And listen to what she says. Show you that I love you. And later on, because I kept hugging her, one day, she was pissed. She goes, that's not love. So what did I do? Literally, I kid you not, I was teaching this workshop again, and she was kind of getting pissed off. And she was sitting next to me, and we were on the table, and there's like 7 guys there. And I kind of pointed at her, and they're like, yeah, because she wasn't really paying attention. She was kind of pissed. And I took a piece of paper, and I crumpled it up, and then I uncrumpled it, and I wrote, I love you in it. I crumpled it up. I go, here, babe. She goes, are you kidding me? You're giving me your garbage? The garbage is next to you. I go, babe, open it up. She opens it up in front of this group of guys, and she just instantly, tears start pouring. She goes, I love you too. And she's just bawling and bawling. So for those of you who think, well, oh, those are the people where you got to pay a lot of money. No, they just need to see it. One day I walked up to her door, and we used to live in a very hot area. We were near Sacramento, and it was midsummer. They had this rose bush, but it was completely burnt because the sun would just be on it all day long, right? So this time of the year, that rose bush got killed or dried up, and this little tiny cute little rose was kind of perfectly dried up. And it was a little tiny thing, and I snapped it off. I knocked on her door, rung the doorbell, and she comes out, and I held it up. And she just burst out in tears. She says, I love you. And she took it, and she kept that thing for years. If you learn how to push your partner's deep love strategy, they will know, and that's the key word. They will absolutely know, and their body will feel that you love them. So visual people need to see it, auditory people need to hear it, and kinesthetic people need to feel it. So for auditory, they just need to hear things like cutie pie, sweetie, the little nickname you'll have for each other, and honey, and I love you, and and just anything that's just, auditory, verbal. And kinesthetic people need to feel it. You got to lean on them, hug them, hold them, curl up in bed, cuddle, etc. Now for some people, it's time. They need to spend time with you. It's really important to them. So if you have a job where you're constantly gone, you're constantly away, that is not going to work for them. Then there's acts of service. Acts of service is simply doing things for them. It could be cooking. It could be cleaning. It could be maybe like washing their car. Or it could be like, I had a really, really rich friend, and nobody ever did anything for him, and he was always doing stuff for everyone, throwing parties, hiring caterers, and doing all this stuff. And I remember one day going like what am I going to buy this guy for Christmas, because he's done so much for me. And I realized, well, acts of service, do something for him. And man, he was so happy, and he's like, no one ever does anything for me, blah blah blah. So if you want to learn more about this and the other things that I've discovered in my book, buy my book, Crack the Female Code, at crackthefemalecode.com. If you like this video, go ahead and click subscribe, click the like button, make a comment, and remember, go to crackthefemalecode.com. And remember, click subscribe.